Hey guys, this will be video one for a new series that I'm going to do. It's going to be a very short series though, because this guitar is going to materialize very quickly. And this guitar is going to be listed for sale, but I wanted to capture just enough of the build so that whomever buys it will, kind of see it come together. But I'm not going to go into extensive detail about how to build this particular guitar because I already covered it in a video series. The last video I did was video 27, and that video series is called How to Design Build a 50s gold top replica, maybe 50s Les Paul gold top replica, but I don't know. I'll clarify it in the next video. But basically, these two guitars are identical with respect to construction and chambering, because this body is chambered. That one is heavily chambered, but I drew the line on this one. I didn't want to continue chambering it any more than I did, because I didn't want to lose the tonal aspects of the Korina. So we'll get into that stuff a little bit, but for the most part, I love it. There's a part of me I'm a little bit torn. I was really torn about listing it for sale, but I got so many guitars, I don't need another one. And long story short, this guitar is going to be off the charts, stellar for someone. So let's dive right in and talk about what's in front of us and what it is I'm going to do with this series. Again, I'm going to title it How to Design Build a 59 Les Paul replica using Stuart McDonald templates, and but I will be referring you over to that other video series quite a bit with respect to how to do certain operations, because I want to get this thing finished as quickly as possible. So what is it that we have in front of us? About 2 or 3, 4 months ago, I was building this 58 Explorer replica, and I bought all of this Korina, really top-notch stuff. This is AAA stuff. It's completely flamed, and got some beautiful figure in it, and it's just pure quarter sawn. And I was not expecting to have enough wood left over from that build in order to build another guitar. But I mean, by the grace of God and the skin of my teeth, man, I just barely got this body out of all the drops. And the neck is is a scarf joint headstock. We'll talk about that stuff later, but for the most part, the neck is coming together extremely well also. And it's going to be beautiful because the neck is quarter sawn and it will match this quarter sawn body. Okay, so let's just dive right in, as I've already mentioned, and I'll do a bit of a flyby and show you what's in front of us. And I'm going to do some weight comparatives in a little while, but I just want to show you kind of what I'm thinking when I'm chambering a guitar. And what's bizarre, this is my own design, but I tripped up on there's little gnats in here, on a video, not a video, but some pictures of how they're chambering their guitars right now. And this is amazing. They're actually doing something very similar to that. So I didn't copy that. That's just kind of, it's defined by the fact that you want to leave this mass down the center line, but you want to relieve some weight. And how do you do it? Well, you work within the parameters of the footprint, and whatever this footprint is, then it determines how much you can step in or how close you can get to a hole like that. Because see, I could have come up here and done some chambering, but I didn't want to turn this thing into a Gretsch like a Penguin or a Duo Jet or a Silver Jet or any of that stuff, because I wanted to keep all this mass in here to maintain the tonal aspects of the Korina. Okay, and really beautiful. This is going to have a bit of a chevron. It's called a chevron figure. The flame kind of goes on an angle down, but then the way this one was oriented in the board, and it is from the identical board, the chevron flame over here goes down this way. So it goes down this way and it goes down this way. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it in this video. It's kind of irrelevant. We'll get there soon enough because I'm about to do some sealing. But it's going to be really beautiful. And the cool thing is you can see just all the heavy, well, it's just pure quarter stone. And makes a huge difference in the tone as well. So let me check the time. I don't have a script. And I'm going to do this in one take because I'm losing my voice, and I don't want to do 3 or 4 videos, and because all I'll do is just forget what I covered or didn't cover and stuff like that. So when you're building this type of guitar, I would highly recommend, unless you've got a 59 laying around, because you're not going to find this at any store that will allow you to trace it. But you can order these templates from Stuart McDonald, which you guys have already heard me talk about, but I'm going to treat this video series as if if this is the first time anyone has ever come on my channel. If you were building this guitar yourself, you can order these templates from Stuart McDonald. This is based on Dan Erlewine's 59 Les Paul Burst, an authentic guitar that he owned quite a while back, sold to some professional musician, but he traced it and he took all the measurements and all the specs. And I'm sure there's some sort of affiliation between StewMac and Gibson Manufacturing, but I don't really know what it is that is permissible. So, but nonetheless, we can buy these as weekend warrior guitar builders, and I like doing these video series and just show you kind of how you can use the templates, because there's no way I could have pulled this footprint off by guessing at it and or tracing something in a local music store, because it's nowhere remotely similar. It's a considerably bigger footprint. When I say considerably, a quarter of an inch, give or take. But nonetheless, this is what we're going to be building, or that's what I've already started. And I didn't want to do any of that on video because I already covered it in this video series over here, which is, I may have already said this, but that video series is how to design build a 50s era Les Paul Replica gold top or something like that. I'll clarify it in a future video. But I knew this thing was going to be enormous in weight, and that I was going to be chambering it, because this guitar right here is my own personal guitar. It's going to be getting a Floyd Rose on it. I still haven't finished it, and I'll cover this guitar a little bit in the video, but this thing is as light as a feather, and it's an absolute tone monster. There's going to be a tone monster. But so I say all that to say this. In that video series, if you want to know how I built this guitar or how I did all this chamber work, I covered every bit of it in that video series. It's identical to this. So it might be a little bit different here and there, but for the most part, that's identical, you name it. And obviously all this is based on, the StewMac templates, which apparently was based on Dan's 59 burst that he owned. Okay, so what do we got here? I may have already mentioned I'm going to sell this guitar. I did start up one video earlier and then I erased it because I went off the rails and started talking about stuff that was irrelevant. But I am going to sell this guitar, and the neck is drying up right now. I did some glue up on that, but for the most part, this wood has all everything came out of the exact same board. The neck and the body came out of the exact same Korina. That's so important, because when you start talking about chatoyancy and color and quarter stone and things like that, the neck is perfectly quarter stone with the body as well. So when that neck glues into this body, it's going to be acting almost like a through body construction or through body design. Okay, it's going to be off the charts. Right now, I've got it. It's fairly light. We will do some weight comparatives in a little while. But I didn't want to take it any farther because I didn't want to run the risk of losing the tonal aspects, this real solid center right up in here of the Korina. I didn't want to lose the the punch. And that's the only way I can think of how to describe the Korina. Man, it's got a mid-range punch that'll just blow you away. Hence the reason why the cap that I'm going to be putting on it will be Honduran mahogany. That'll give it some clarity and some might give it. It should give it a much more warmth and not such a shrill, bright instrument. Because I have heard this guitar. I think the custom shop did this guitar in 2008 or 2013, and they were all Korina body, all Korina neck, and then they put a maple cap on it. Uh, it was okay, but to me it was just a little bit too thin. And I think had they have put the mahogany on, but they did a clear finish. They wanted to show. I think it was quilted maple. That's what it was. They were showing the beauty of the woods together with the quilted maple top. But this top is going to be a paint grade top, and there's a very strong possibility, according to how far I take this guitar before I sell it, I may paint it black. I don't really want to do a gold top, although I got to tell you, the gold top would be stunning against the Korina. So we'll get there. But nonetheless, I did trip up on a video the other night of one of the rarest guitars that ever came out of the shop back in the 50s, and it was a 1959 Les Paul that was not a custom, meaning it didn't have all the multi-piece binding, but it had the trapezoid inlays, that right there, but the guitar was all black, and it had single binding. Let's see if I've got some binding. So imagine, the black. I'm sorry, on their guitar it was all black, but it had the old vintage cream single binding. That's a 60 thousandths, but it might be a little bit dangerous. We'll talk about that stuff later. I do use a 60 thousandths binding on all of my replicas, but I make certain that I'm not going to be doing any scraping on them. If you think you're going to be doing a lot of scraping, go with the thicker binding so that you can cut it down to your target. But for the most part, I think this guitar would be really stunning with the mahogany cap, Honduran mahogany cap, that would be paint grade black. Because the reason I say that about the cap being paint grade, and I got to be really careful to protect this finish, because this guitar is pretty much finished and ready. Well, it is. It's ready for clear cut on the back. But I had this Honduran. Let's see if I can find the node. I should have found the node. See, you're looking for the node up in this area right here. Let me find it. There it is. It's roughly right there. Okay, so very clear. And I think I was off the node a little bit, but nonetheless, it's in there somewhere. This stuff is off the charts from a standpoint of clarity. This was the remnant wood from the necks where I build the Honduran mahogany necks, which this is perfectly quarter sewn this way. But once all three of these, this piece and this piece came from the exact same neck blank, which was about 30 inches long. This piece came from another neck billet, which was like 3 inches by 4 by about 30 something inches long. But the centerpiece is from a different board, a different tree, et cetera, et cetera. But nonetheless, and I say all that to say this, it's not pretty. It wasn't intended to be pretty, because the only reason you would want a clear Honduran mahogany top is if it had a bunch of beautiful flame in it and it was, heavily figured. But because I'm building a paint grade topped guitar, I'm just going for tone. Tone is critical, and I've already machined this cap to be the perfect dimension of the lower. I just do that. Some people don't like to do that; they like the overhang. but I like to do a lot of component type work because I'm the world's worst at changing my mind. And and I processed through this build probably for the last month and a half, thinking about, where can I've got that? And now that I realize that I've got this wood that I can build this particular guitar, what sort of cap should I put on it? Well, that's when I tabled it because I didn't want to make any decisions until I really, really thought about what's critically important. And what's important to me is tone, tone, and tone, and then appearance. Um, I don't care for guitars that are just real flashy and flamboyant if they're, if they don't have a great tone. And I really think, based on my experience as a builder, the Honduran mahogany is really going to tame the Korina and give it a beautiful, rich clarity that we probably have not heard yet. Because out of all of my research, I could not find a Les Paul or anything similar to this with the Korina body and the Korina neck and the Honduran mahogany cap. Again, I mentioned, they had the quilted maple on theirs from 2000, whenever, 2008, 2013. Maybe they did it in both years. And it sounded great, but it was a little bit too punchy. Just a little bit too punchy. It needed some depth there. I think the Honduran would really warm it up. Okay, let me check the time. 16 minutes. I gotta drink of water. Okay, so what do we have in front of us? I've already covered the species and my reasoning for using the Honduran. What else could you use if you didn't have Honduran? You probably could use, you might get away with walnut or cherry as long as it's really light. See, this is light as a feather because it's intended for neck wood. So if it was intended for necks, this is the remnant wood from where I build my necks. This is like the master luthier level material for neck building. And if this is the drops, and then I'm using it in a plain sewn fashion, I'm going to be getting a stellar build. And you probably could get away with the mahogany or cherry, walnut or cherry, but it's probably going to be way too heavy. Once I carve all this down per the Stuart McDonald carving templates, I think that's C. Yeah, C will go right there. Once I carve that down, I'm going to be taking an enormous amount of the wood off all the entire perimeter and even the pitch. So this thing is currently about right at 2 pounds. It'll end up being about right at 1 pound. Okay. And it'll be super light guitar. We'll do some weight, again, we'll do some weight analysis comparatives later on in the video. But right now, I just want to keep this real general general enough that whomever might be considering buying it will realize, oh, okay, it's not going to weigh 11 pounds or it's not going to weigh 5 pounds. I want someone to have a general idea of, yes, I don't have a problem carving off a lot of the weight, but right up to a threshold where it starts changing the tonal aspects of the Korina. If you're going to do that, well, then this should have just been left 1 3/4 of an inch thick, and maybe carved out, maybe chambered out, and had a flat cap put on it, and turned into like a Les Paul special or a Gretsch type, pick your poison, or a custom build, some sort of custom guitar. So the Honduran mahogany is going to sound unbelievable. It's going to be light as possible, but it's not going to be a super light guitar. Some of my initial weight analysis is kind of leading me to believe that this guitar, after it's all said and done, and the frets are in it, the strings are on it, and it's got some nitrocellulose lacquer on it, I still think it's going to be getting very close to 9 pounds. I know it's not going to be over 9 1/4, I'm sorry, I know it's not going to be under like 8.5, but I don't think it's going to be over 9.25. You know, not there yet. Once I carve this, because I won't be able to, because I'm going to be gluing this down. Um, I'll just have to do some assessment as close as I can, but there's a possibility it's going to be over 9 pounds. But as I've already mentioned, I'm not going to carve any more of the Korina away, because if I did, it would be exponentially detrimental. What would happen to the, or potentially happen to the tone? Okay, so speaking of tone, let's talk about these. I'll leave this right here. Well, put this over here. All right, let me just go straight to the finish line. This whole concept design, this will be the 4th time I've built this design, and it started out in a 55 Les Paul custom replica that I built for a guy a couple years ago, about a year ago, and I did this whole tone bar thing. I wanted to keep the middle as solid as possible, even so much so that when I routed for the control, where's the camera? See that little fillet? So I routed that about about 3/16 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch deeper than what was called for, so that I could then come in and epoxy that in you know, down into that little control cavity and turn the top back solid. Therefore, I'm reconnecting the top, because you have to keep in mind, when I first started machining this, this side was almost 2 inches thick. I machined off whatever, it was about 3/16 of an inch. So what the width of this side is right now is 1 13/16. It's 1/16 of an inch over 1 3/4. And your binding will basically come down about a 16th. So when the cap goes on here and I route for the binding channel, that route will drop about a 16th of an inch down into the side of this body. So initially, when I was thinking about building this guitar, I was going to leave it roughly 2 inches thick here, put a cap on it, and then let the cap be really, really thin out here. But because of the density of the Korina, it was way too heavy. So I knew it's going to be wise to machine off a lot of this top surface, or either flip it over and machine off a lot of the back. So I elected to machine off all of the mass off the top and take it down to 1 13/16 of an inch. Okay, that ought to make sense. Because after it's all said and done, once your guitar is built, you know, and if it's going to be a paint grade top, and as long as you have an exceptional glue join and stuff like that, according to how much chambering you did, because you wouldn't want this to be paper thin out here, but it doesn't really matter if this lower right here comes, this is pretty important. It doesn't really matter if this lower, let's see if I can find a pointer, comes up to right there, or if it stops right there. Be careful if you, let's say you wanted 1 3/4 of an inch exposed right here. I wouldn't recommend trying to machine this perfectly 1 3/4, because that's where your binding meets the body, and you've got to maintain a beautiful visual line there. The first time you drop a tool and ding the corner, well, you'll be dinging the actual exposed line. Okay, that ought to make sense. So I got a 16th of an inch idiot room that I can make a mistake if I had to, or if it happened, it wouldn't destroy my job. Okay, why? Because the sides are clear coat. We want to see them. This was gonna be a gold top, but this one, again, according to how far I take it, might very well be a black top, 59, single binding. I hope I I know I digressed there. I probably got off track, but this one most likely will be just a single piece binding. I don't really want to do a custom. If someone were to buy it and that's just what they insisted on, then yeah, I would have to come in, even though this has already been rounded over. It's not that difficult to machine it in, and it would be a stepped route, kind of like that right there. It would be a stepped route where it would receive the tall binding on the outside, but then it would go in close to 1/4 of an inch and receive all of, well, not on the back, because the back would be a five ply binding and the front would be 7. It would go in about 1/4 of an inch on the front, on the, where the mahogany is. Let's say that was the mahogany. It would go in about 1/4 of an inch and just get crazy, crazy binding deep. But be beautiful. But it'd also be extremely expensive because I'm not doing free stuff anymore, and I don't think you want to go there because that's a very expensive bonding job. So right now, I want to just keep it like a 59 single binding, and it would be bound up the fretboard, but then the headstock would be unbound, painted all black on the face, and possibly going to do a stinger on the back of that neck. We'll cross that bridge later on, though. Nonetheless, I do know beyond a shadow of a doubt, this thing is going to be a 6-foot tall supermodel. It's going to be a rock star. It's going to be a stunningly beautiful guitar. I know that for a fact. And I think it'd be so cool to do the black top rather than the gold top. Okay, so still change our minds, but nonetheless, let me check the time. I'm going to pause, and I got to get some something to drink because my throat is getting fairly scratchy, and I'll be right back. Okay, let's dive back in. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the video here fairly soon, and I'm just going to cover some of the general specs as to what this guitar will be. And then the second video, then I'll start going into some more detail about, the process of building the guitar. So the specs will be this. It'll be a 17-degree pitch headstock. It will be a quarter sewn Korina. It's a one-piece neck. As far as the neck itself, there is some scarf joint work at the headstock, but it's not a two-piece neck like a bass side and a treble side, or a 3-piece or a 5-piece or anything like that. The neck, as I clarified, came from the exact same board. It wasn't just that it was from the same manufacturer or the provider. It was from the actual wholesaler. I mean, it was actually from the actual same board. Okay, it'll have a Bolivian rosewood fretboard, and it will be a 12-inch radius. It'll be a 24 3/4 inch scale. The face, I forgot to mention, the face of the headstock will be, the headstock, I probably will leave it large in the event someone changed their mind and they wanted to go with the custom, like a bigger headstock. So we'll cover that stuff later on, but I'll keep it, yeah, I will. I'll keep it such that if someone wanted to go in that direction, they could turn it into a 50s custom replica, spot on. Okay, why? Because it'll be the 17-degree pitch headstock. And the profile of the neck will probably just be traditional 50s. Not there yet, but I do have enough mass in the neck that it could be massive. It could be a baseball bat if you wanted it. It could be really big. And it'll be obviously the traditional mortise and tenon configuration per spot on per the StewMac templates. Okay, and then obviously we've already talked about the body and the cap. The cap enough to clarify why my reasoning for not going with a maple is where I really wanted to go with that. So the cap needs to be Honduran mahogany for clarity reasons and for tone reasons, but I had to do the weight relief I don't know if you see that. I'll always do a press tracing of my guitars when I build a guitar like that. I'll come in, and do all the pressing so that once it gets a cap on it, I can pull up the tracing for that guitar and I can look at it and determine, hey, what if I elected to go with some sort of additional wiring in this area right here? Well, I know exactly where the cavity is to do it, okay? And then once you get into the body, so as I mentioned, it'll have the Honduran cap, and that I will be doing that. In other words, I'm going to continue building this guitar. I'm not just going to offer it the way it is right now because I don't think anyone would understand. They wouldn't have enough knowledge about guitar building to buy it as it is and then take it to someone and have them finish it. The odds are it would end up getting screwed up because someone wouldn't understand the tonal aspects or wouldn't know how to build a guitar. And there's a lot going on when building an arch top, especially a chambered arch top, because if you're not careful and you had too much glue seeped into that cavity and then that little piece of glue broke loose, well, you'd have a little cricket in there, rattling around. So a lot of things like that. Top will be paint grade. Could go with P90s if you wanted, or the traditional humbucker, per the 59 specs. And you might be looking at that body thinking, well, wait a minute, it's already routed for that one right there. Not necessarily. Once it gets this cap over this, and I probably will epoxy fill it a small. I was going to go ahead and route both humbuckers, but let's cover this. Let me just hold it up here. Okay, that's where the P90, make sure I'm on track. And I'm on center line as well up there. That's where the P90s would go. All the more reason not to route your neck pickup yet, because you want to do all your tenon work first. And then if you were to change over from a humbucker to a P90, you would be routing out material in the back, and there would be a little bit of an area up here left open. So if you had have already put the cap on and arched the top and then routed out for humbuckers, it would have then been too late to have gone with the P90. But with this right here, I probably will epoxy a little fillet in there out of the exact same Korina, because I still have a lot of this wood, and therefore whomever buys it, I'll do all that routing for them for no charge. If you elect to go with the P90s per like a 55 design, then voila, that's what I'll do for you. Or if you prefer to go with the humbucker configuration, well, then that's the initial starting location of the bridge humbucker, and then the sky's the limit up front. I may have talked about it briefly. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I have built this guitar before, and it sounds phenomenal. Because what's going on here is it's not just a bunch of holes drilled into the body from a weight relief standpoint. What you're doing by maintaining some symmetry here, just imagine this is kind of like a tone bar traveling down through. Well, it's all solid up here, but then this starts defining the upper part of the tone bar, which connects to that down there, connects all the tone into to the outer part of the body here. And you might be thinking, well, it's all solid over there. No, because see, that would define the lower part of the tone bar right here. Okay, so there's a tone bar going on right here. It's a little bit fatter because of the other route work. There's a tone bar here, and then there's the outer side of that tone bar kind of continuing up. It's no longer a tone bar up here because it's just all solid, but it gives a beautiful transition of the tone. Let me get my little tool that I always use for that. Got earbuds in, take them out, turn the volume down. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so that's the outer perimeter. We didn't lose the guitar. There are no dead spots like where you like if you had have routed that out too thin, well then you might have lost the tone. Let's go down the middle now. And when you hear that right there, that's off the charts stellar, what it sounded like when it was solid, but the guitar would have weighed well over 10.5 pounds. And I don't care how pretty it is or how great that sounds, to me, it's just not worth it. So still sounds phenomenal, but by leaving that center line down through there, we still get a lot of the initial transference of the tone, because we left a lot of that mass up there. All the more reason not to route too deep here, not to route too deep there. But there's nothing, as you can see, and as you can hear, there's nothing wrong with taking out a lot of that material here, a lot of that material here and here. Well, everything you see, and we didn't lose the guitar. Still sounds great. Probably the most important thing, I can't believe I didn't talk about this. I would lose my, here it is. Okay, I already covered the fact that this is currently, it's over 1 3/4. It's 1 13/16. That's a 1/16 of an inch over 1 3/4. But when you're looking at the depth that I took out of the body, they're all identical. You see how much mass I left in? I left in an enormous amount of material in the back. And what is that magic number right there? It's just under, okay, let me make sure I don't lose anybody. When you look at that route depth right there, transfer it up to here. I don't want to put a pencil on it because I've got this finished sanded. I'm about to do some sealer work. But if you were to draw a line across there, you see that I left an enormous amount of back body. I didn't, and that's just under 5/8 of an inch. I didn't run the risk of taking it down paper thin, because if you had have done that, you would have gotten some dead spots. And, you know, out here, the way I'm holding the guitar, it doesn't sound good. But you would have gotten some really nasty dead spots up there. Make sure I hold the guitar well. It is going to sound darker, but it's going to still be clear. Hear how it got thinner. Only because that's a huge area. And if you had gone too thin out here, it would have sounded like cardboard paper. Would it have hurt the guitar? Not much, but if it had have taken a blow, it might have cracked, and we don't want that. So a lot of material left in the body. Okay, so as usual, I always end up spending too much time talking about things like that. But then again, it is fairly important because it's a ton of information. There's a ton of moving parts in these things, and it just is what it is. So I'm just going to stop talking and end the video as quickly as I can, because in the next videos, as I progress, I will immediately start going into the sealer work and the finish work and the, just general conversation about building the guitar. So I appreciate you guys checking in, and I'll see you in the next video.